Recycling doesn't matter is a polarizing statement, one that doesn't quite seem to fit in a sustainable design class. The narrative behind recycling is one formed to make us, as consumers, feel better about the throwaway culture we live in. Recycling is something that we have always been encouraged to do, as it's the right thing and helps the environment. Rather than throw things away, we recycle them so they can be made into something else. Throwing things away, however, is a relatively new concept. This practice has been pushed onto us by the manufacturers who create single-use plastics, things that hold no real value and have to be thrown away to make a profit. The goal of this video is to show that recycling doesn't really accomplish more than throwing things away, and that the responsibility of these sustainable practices should start with the producers and not the consumers. So this is a very large topic to cover in
4 minutes.
But to fully explain the intimidating position of recycling doesn't matter, I feel like it's important to give some historical context. Plastics and consumer goods really only became widespread after World War II and in the latter half of the 20th century. This was huge for manufacturers because for the first time, it became cheaper to produce a new plastic container every time than it was to collect and reuse the old ones. The garbage industry at the time was very small by modern standards and wasn't equipped to handle this new change. For this reason, most people didn't have a way to easily dispose of these plastics. This caused a problem where people would just toss empty plastic and glass containers on the ground, something we now know as littering. Littering became such a big problem that Vermont actually banned single-use plastics in 1953. The term itself was created by Keep America Beautiful, a nonprofit whose stated goal was to improve communities and reduce littering. Ultimately, this organization was created and funded by the bottling industry to prevent states like Vermont from getting in the way of their business. Keep America Beautiful was and is a PR campaign that creates this narrative of shared responsibilities among the consumers instead of the producers. And it was an overwhelming success. That puts us to where we are now with this responsibility to make an inherently unsustainable practice sustainable. We all know the words reduce, reuse, recycle, but we very often forget that those are actually ordered by the impact that they make. For example, when you reduce, less plastics will need to be made overall. If you reuse, plastics will still be manufactured, a process that will use water and put carbon into the environment, but more utility will come from that one production cycle. With recycling, it takes another production cycle, basically just reducing the raw materials it takes to create the object, but not the energy it takes to make those materials into the thing. But it's still better than just throwing things away, right? So yes, I'll concede to that, but only when things are properly recycled, and they're not. The United States used to send plastics to China to be recycled, but in 2018, China cut us off and said that they no longer would accept plastic waste imports. This was because most of the plastics being sent over just couldn't be recycled, and China didn't want to be the world's garbage dump. So what do we do now? This isn't a joke. Only 8.7% of plastic that gets put into the recycling bin actually gets recycled. Not the total amount of plastic, just the stuff in the blue bin. So essentially, under the guise of being environmentally friendly and sustainable, we allow packaging companies to get away with creating this immense amount of waste that could totally be recycled, but will definitely not be, just because it's cheaper than it is to process bottle deposits. What's the solution then? That's a great question. A start would be to avoid any single-use plastics like the plague. Carry a Nalgene, or better yet, use a glass or metal water bottle. Reuse any plastics that you do have to use. Basically, make an active attempt to only follow the first 2 R's. When you can't though, don't blame yourself or others. People are quick to call each other out for not recycling a Coke bottle or to yell at others for littering, when we really should be asking where that bottle came from and why it exists in the first place.